Let's talk about stress and health. At the end of the session, you are expected to identify and explain the sources of stress, compare and contrast the 4 major kinds of conflict based on approach and avoidance, cite the advantages and disadvantages of stress, provide insights on how one could effectively cope with stress, and formulate conclusion based on the understanding of the concepts learned. Earlier in our discussion, we've touched on the definition of stress, where it can be thought of as any event that strains or exceeds an individual's ability to cope. It's hard to keep stress away from our life. So what are the sources of stress? First, life events. Psychologically significant events that occur in a person's life, such as divorce, childbirth, or change in employment. The most stressful negative life events that have been studied by psychologists include the following: violence, war and sexual assault, loss of a family member, natural disaster, terrorism, daily hassles, positive life events. Frustration is also another source of stress. Frustration is the result of being unable to satisfy a motive. Conflict, the state in which 2 or more motives cannot be satisfied because they interfere with one another. Psychologists use the terms approach and avoidance in discussing conflicts. The following are the 4 major kinds of conflict involving approach and avoidance. Approach conflict. Conflict in which the individual must choose between 2 positive goals of approximately equal. Example, suppose that when you finish school, you are fortunate enough to be offered 2 attractive jobs. Both seem to offer good working conditions, good prestige, and reasonable salary. Because everything looks so positive, it's often difficult to see that you are in a serious conflict. The choice between 2 situations can be similarly stressful. Avoidance-avoidance conflict. Conflict in which individual must choose between 2 negative outcomes of approximately equal value. Approach-avoidance conflict. Conflict in which achieving a positive goal will produce a negative outcome as well. Multiple approach-avoidance conflict requires the individual to choose between alternatives that contain both positive and negative consequences. Pressure. Stress arises from the threat of negative events, such as the possibility of poor performance on an exam. Environmental conditions such as heat, cold, and pollution can be stressful as well. Coping refers to anything people do to deal with or manage stress or emotions. How do we cope with stress? First, removing or reducing stress. One effective way of dealing with stress is to remove or to reduce the source of stress from our lives. Second, cognitive coping. 3 effective cognitive coping strategies involve changing how we think about the stressful event, focusing attention away from stressful events that cannot be changed, and religious coping. Managing stress reactions. When the source of stress realistically cannot be removed or changed, another effective option is to manage our psychological and physiological reactions to the stress.